So welcome to the fourth webinar of the about international webinar series on agrovoltaics in Africa, farming with solar power in Africa. And this is fourth webinar in series, and we have 3 stations connected. So welcome to the fourth webinar of the. We have 4 stations connected today. We have a distinguished speakers from United States in Arizona, Greg Barron-Gafford, and it's almost midday, early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and Marifolke Center, Nieta, it's lunchtime, and Japan, it's midnight. Okay. And we are supposed to be joined by Ibrahim Togola in Nigeria, and also Selenge Vocational Training Center in Mali, but they were not here yet. So first, I want to recap the what we are doing here. Yeah. This webinar series is a very action-oriented webinar to come up with tangible output. One is to establish agrovoltaic project in Africa, and another is to form African agrivoltaic associations. And today's entire program runs for 60 minutes. First, we have a presentation from Greg, Agrivoltaics significance and the applications in dryland agriculture and the environment. And that is followed by 30 minutes discussion. Please write your questions in a question and answer box at the bottom of the screen. So today's guest speaker is Dr. Greg Barron-Gafford, Associate Professor of the University of Arizona in the United States. He is specialized in the dryland ecosystem research and he has published over 80 articles in the scientific journals. And he's not only active in research, but also education for kids. He established a series of agrovoltaic learning labs at Biosphere 2 and local schools. And he's learning scientist in dryland agrivoltaics, having 10 years of research in agrovoltaics since 2011, particularly under the hot and dry environment. He is also a member of the scientific committee of Agrivoltaics conference in last year in 2020 and this year as well. He's also a member of Harvesting the Sun Twice project, which was presented by Richard at the last webinar. So today's his talk will be good sequel from the last webinar from Richard. So please welcome Dr. Greg Barron-Gafford. So floor is for you, Greg. Mic is off. Mic is off.
Great. Thank you, Makoto. Can you see my slides okay today?
Yes, yes, super okay.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of our findings and to be a part of this exciting movement to create a African Agrivoltaics Association and to build projects around the world to explore this. Some of our affiliations are listed on this slide. I work in the School of Geography, Development, and the Environment, where we do have this shared focus of finding new ways forward for a more sustainable future, but with special care to take in terms of preserving all of the resources in our environment that we can. Also, as Makoto mentioned, the Tucson Unified School District is the grouping of the local schools, because we do work very closely with these students and they help us with our research. And so, as Makoto mentioned, I am in a dryland savanna. When I was able to visit Kenya about 1.5 years ago, I was pleasantly surprised to see so many types of plants that reminded me of home. I live in a grassland savanna. We don't have the very exciting animals that you have here in the United States, but we have some very exciting plants. And it was the ecosystem that motivated me to think about the co-location of vegetation, especially food production, and renewable energy. There are many things that are very similar to an agroforestry type of ecosystem, because we basically, as Richard's project mentions, are harvesting the sun twice. In this case, instead of having an overstory of a prosopis tree or some sort of tree that helps block some of the sunlight for our plants underneath, we actually have solar panels. Both of them provide some characteristic of diffuse light to the vegetation underneath. But unlike an agroforestry system, now our overstory is not competing for water. It's actually providing energy. And so we're looking today at this opportunity for agrivoltaics in dryland agriculture and in dryland environments to try to create a more climate resilient system, something that can help against some of the challenging forces of climate change for maximizing food and energy and water benefits. So this is a map of the United States, and maybe you can see my cursor. I am down here in the southwestern part of the United States. And around the United States, many of us want to increase the amount of renewable energy out on the landscape. We're mostly a grid-connected community out in the United States. And you can see that this graphic here is showing darker colors are actually the largest kilowatts per meter squared per day that you can produce from renewable energy. It also looks like a climate map of heat, because the southwestern part of the United States is the warmest. And this is true of so many parts of our globe, right? Many of our sunniest places are also the warmest. And so when we look at a similar graphic for North Africa, we can see similar dark colors in North and Western Africa, where you can produce lots of renewable energy. So the capacity for producing renewable energy is present, but as you know, it also can be quite a warm place to live. So why is this American talking about heat in the same time as renewable energy? Well, because the efficiency of a solar panel declines linearly with temperature. And so we're trying to make sure that when we introduce renewable energy out into the landscape, because it requires lots of money and resources and effort, we want to make sure that we're also creating a source of renewable energy that is more sustainable under a changing climate. And I mentioned also some of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because they are an indicator of how some of the development resources around the globe might be directed. So under Target 7, we have this goal of increasing the global percentage of renewable energy. I imagine you're aware of this. We also have this Target 7.3, which is about doubling the improvement of energy efficiency. And this is a very challenging thing to meet, the increasing the efficiency of the renewable energy that is out on the landscape when there's this negative relationship between the efficiency of our potential solar systems and temperature. So we have competing. We want more efficiency, but a climatic change in a typical photovoltaic system may be more difficult. But thankfully, the people who create the Sustainable Development Goals recognize it is not all about energy. We have this simultaneous target of increasing universal access to safe and nutritious food, increasing the production of food, especially among small-scale farm holders, increasing the infrastructure in some of the rural parts of the globe. But we also have target number 6, which is increasing clean water and sanitation. And so we do not need to look at the United Nations as telling us everything we must do, but we should utilize the United Nations targets as an indicator of where resources might be flowing for development projects. And to recognize that an agrivoltaics setting for some of our energy and food production can actually align with multiple targets if we're looking to make use of these resources. But how well will it work? And what are those climate pressures? Again, I do not need to tell you everything because you live in this landscape, but many parts of northern, western, and eastern Africa are expected to see increases in your temperature. And that's important because of not only the reduction in the efficiency of renewable energy related to photovoltaics that we talked about, but also because plants become more stressed at higher temperatures. Plants also can become stressed under those extreme temperatures that we find, under periods of drought, which are supposedly going to happen at similar rates or even less rates in East Africa. But coupled with these increased fluctuations in temperature is an increased fluctuation in the amount of precipitation. North Africa expected to see reduced precipitation, whereas West Africa is expected to see increased variability in precipitation, which could mean some periods of flood, but also some periods of increased drought stress. So how can we reduce the fluctuations we see in temperature and moisture? Well, you're not alone. Many other parts of the globe are also going through this challenge of more scarce water resources and increased temperature. And in some parts of California, which is the very western United States, some of these farmers are simply having too much of a challenge to acquire water, either because of cost to pump that water, or because there simply is not enough water to go around. And so they're stopping food production and switching to renewable energy solar farms. And in some places we say, maybe this is a good idea. They are not using so much water. But when we are in landscapes that require both food and energy and water conservation, we must find out a better solution than to just switch completely from one land use to another. And so potentially co-locating vegetation and food production and renewable energy could provide these benefits across food, energy, and water. And the width of these bars are an indicator of our hypothesis about the level of resources that can be offered. You can get energy production from a typical photovoltaic installation, but perhaps you can get more revenue and more resources for your community by co-locating the food production and the renewable energy. Similarly, you can produce food in a traditional farming setting, but maybe you can increase the amount of food production because of the benefits that come from growing in the shade of a photovoltaic canopy. So how can this work? Here's a cartoon, an illustration of this. And on the left set of illustrations, we're producing grasses for grazing. And on the right graphic, just an illustration of tomatoes and leafy greens, like spinach or kale. And what we're wondering here is, can an agrivoltaics or an agri-solar or a solar shared program, depending on the language that's being used, can we adapt our food systems to survive through periods of drought and temperature stress? The temperature stress here is because of growing in the shade of a solar canopy. The plants are not experiencing the full day sun. And in many of our dryland environments, plants begin to wilt in the midday sun because it is too severe of an environment. They can actually be damaged by having too much sunlight. So can providing some level of shade assist with this? Can we actually improve the renewable energy production through transpiration? And so what we're talking about here is a simple process of photosynthesis and transpiration that Richard touched on last session. Every time the plant has these little pores that allows carbon dioxide to come in, water escapes. And just like our skin does perspiration or sweating, we lose water and it cools our local skin. We're wondering if the transpiration from the plants can actually cool the solar panels. And if you remember this graphic, cooling a solar panel would actually mean you're moving left on this graphic to increased efficiency. So can we actually get better energy production because we have co-located with food? And the last goal here is to ease our dependence on irrigation, reduce the number of watering events or irrigation events we have to do, reduce the amount of pumping we have to do for irrigation. And this is simply because if you think about if you have a glass of water and you spill this glass of water in the shade or in the sun, where does it stay wet longer? Where's the moisture in the soil retained? In the shady environment, yes? Because we have less direct sunlight evaporating off that water. So the question we always receive is, do plants need sunlight? Can plants handle being grown in the shade? And it's very important to know this relationship between the amount of light a plant receives on the x-axis and on the y-axis, the amount of photosynthesis that is possible. And it is correct that plants do require sunlight and they do more photosynthesis when they get more sunlight initially, but very quickly this relationship plateaus. And this is our light level in many of our dryland and sunny environments. And this is the light level in the shade of a solar array. And so you can see that we can cut out 75% of the sunlight, but that does not mean that we cut out 75% of the photosynthesis because of this relationship with light. At the same time, on the y-axis, we still have photosynthesis, but now on the x-axis, we are looking at temperature. And in the open sun, it may be too warm for the plants. Plants are very much like us. They do not prefer to be too cold or too hot. They have some peak performance somewhere in the middle. And often they're performing their photosynthetic in the midday sun is beyond that temperature peak or optimum. But it's cooler in the shade of a solar canopy. And so can we have this simple trade-off where you have a small reduction in photosynthetic capacity because of reduced light, but it's actually offset by a benefit of being in better temperature. So this is the first installation we created in the United States. The Biosphere 2 is this research facility in the background. In the front, on the left, you can see an example of this machine we utilize for capturing the photosynthesis rates of these plants. It is similar when we are able to go to the doctor and they check our pulse to see how well our heart is doing. This is our machine to check how well the plant is doing in terms of its photosynthesis. And you can see in the foreground, we are growing plants in a full sun environment and also the same exact plants in the shade of an agrivoltaics array where we've simply elevated the panels. So in this installation, we are over 3 meters above ground height. And that is because we are meeting local farmer demands for being able to utilize a tractor in this setting. But the installation does not need to be quite so high. I am simply kind of tall. I am about 2.5 meters, so it's nice to have this extra space. So now let's walk quickly through food, energy, and water. This is an illustration of some of our college students making measurements under the shade of the solar. And we debate who has to go do the measurements in the sun because it is so hot. And it's important to remember this one other graphic about photosynthesis. Depending on your experience, you may know this already, but plants, they are green all day long. All day you look at the plant and it is green, but all day long the plant is not doing photosynthesis. And so what we're looking at here on the x-axis is the time of day, and on the y-axis, the rate of photosynthesis. And in all of my graphs in red will be the photosynthesis of traditional open sun agriculture. And in blue will be under photovoltaics or agrovoltaics. And this is an illustration of the photosynthesis rate of a plant in a traditional open sun growing setting. When the sun comes out, in this case around 6:15 in the morning, which is about 1 hour from now in Arizona, the photosynthetic rates will increase dramatically of this plant. But very quickly it becomes too dry. The atmosphere is so dry, the plants close their stomata so that they do not lose water. And if you have closed the pathway for losing water, you can no longer accept carbon dioxide, and so your photosynthesis declines. And you might see a little bit additional bump of photosynthesis in the later part of the day as the intense pressures of the climate become less. And the question was, in an agrivoltaic setting, do you not reach as large of a peak photosynthesis, but can you maintain that lower level of function throughout the day? And what is the trade-off in terms of your cumulative, your total amount of carbon dioxide uptake? And so why is this guy talking about photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the resource for that plant to take in carbon for growth and reproduction to food production. And so we found that for 3 species in our first study, chiltepin pepper, which is a native pepper to our region, jalapeno, which is a very common pepper used in many portions of the world, and the tomato plant, you can see that for the pepper and for the tomato, we saw increased carbon uptake, a little bit less carbon uptake in jalapeno. And so how did that carbon uptake turn into fruit production? Well, for the chiltepin, which is a pepper that is commonly found in the shade of other plants, triple the production. In tomatoes, double the production. And jalapeno, a slight reduction. And so this reminds us that it doesn't work for everybody. The different plant types have different responses to being grown in an agrivoltaics environment. And so we need to do the science. But at this point in our environment, we have been growing many different types of crops. Some of them are herbs, like coriander or cilantro or basil. Other things like cabbages or leafy greens, like kale and chard, are doing very well. So now let's look at the energy production for those of you who are interested more in energy than food. In this graphic, we're looking again through time and the temperatures of the solar panels. And the gray is the traditional solar panels without the food production underneath, where you do not have the cooling that you find in an agrivoltaic setting. Because again, in the agrivoltaic setting, we are producing food which loses a fair amount of water through transpiration. And you can see that we do have cooler temperatures. And this means increased efficiency, because in this portion, we are seeing about 9 degrees Celsius cooling in our photovoltaics, which is an increase in the efficiency. So a positive benefit there. And finally, in terms of water, you can see here for each one of these spikes is whenever we were irrigating our plants. We have a sensor that goes into the soil so we can measure the moisture level. And every 2 days, when we are irrigating the soil, you can see this rise in soil moisture and then the decline as the soil's dried out. But we created such a different microclimate under our panels that the water stayed in the soil longer. The soil moisture in the agrivoltaic system here in blue, after 2 days before the next irrigation event, was the same as it was in the control setting after only 2 to 3 hours. So a significant retention of soil moisture in the soil, which is why we put the soil moisture in the soil in the first place. Yes, to grow the crops, to sustain the crops through the dry times. And so now we are wondering, can the more marginal lands out on our landscapes, no matter the continent, now become more arable lands simply because we added photovoltaics as an overstory canopy? Can places that were previously too warm or too dry now sustain food production? And for the areas that do already have food production, can we reduce our irrigation use so that we can sustain those water resources for longer periods of time? And these results were summarized in a Nature paper. And if anyone would like a copy, I will be glad to get you a PDF, electronic version of this, because unfortunately we are not able to travel to Mali at this time. So another exciting finding is that we were able to change the seasonality. In our environment, we do not have the long rains and the dry rains or the short rains. We mostly have short rains. And so the question was, in the part of the season when we want to grow carrots, usually it is too dry still in September. And so we must wait until the end of October to produce carrots. And so in an agrivoltaic setting, you can see that the ground is shady. And so the water evaporation is slowed down. And so we planted carrot seeds in August, 2 months before you should plant carrots here. In the open sun, the seeds did not make it, right? It is too hot and too dry. And so that by the time in the second set of graphics, the second photographs, this is now November and you see carrot production. Well, it is already time to harvest carrots in the agrivoltaics. And this is one of our teachers who has harvested some carrots. So we were able to extend the growing season simply by changing the microclimate. And so in support of this idea of a global agrivoltaics association and in support of an African agrivoltaics association, our group here from the Southwestern United States is looking at exploring the options of agrivoltaics across the broader environmental gradients, less dryland environments, utilizing the potential for collaborating with pastoralists and looking at photovoltaics plus grazing. And as Richard mentioned last week, we have the project in East Africa, where it is called Harvesting the Sun Twice. Could agrivoltaics enhance energy and food security in East Africa? And I can have the same question about West Africa, about North Africa, about the different countries that you are calling in from for this particular Zoom. And this project is a collaboration among people from many countries, from the United States, from the United Kingdom, and from parts of Africa. And you heard about this last time from Dr. Richard Randall-Bogus, and you can see his contact information here if you would like to learn more about it. Richard is helping coordinate the project and lead much of the physical science research that is going on here, the broad level thinking about this project. And while Richard is not alone, Richard is part of a large team. I have to mention one member of team because she is dear to my heart, Diana Gitu, who lives within Kenya and who will be helping us capture some of the social science, some of the interests of the people and the communities and the farmers and the policymakers in country, so that we can better understand the physical science and the social, political barriers and opportunities for agrivoltaics in Africa. And Richard showed you this graphic. This project is all about understanding the benefits that move beyond conventional solar energy systems to an agrivoltaic system. That increased land use efficiency, that ability to reduce water resources, that ability to release some of our dependence on irrigation, that ability to utilize the energy for some kind of post-harvest support of our food production. And this is an illustration of that one project from East Africa. And again, Richard's information can be found here, and I'm sure that the others leading this call can help you contact that if you want to learn more about this particular project. So I will end by saying that we have to think about the the benefits that come with some of the concerns about extra cost. We have to think about the potential of our increasing our land use efficiency, which we can optimize nearly anywhere on the planet. Depending on the climate, we have different levels of benefits. But we want to maximize all of the services that we get from our landscape. The land is there providing for us, and we want to make the most of what it can provide for us. Increase the sustainability and the resilience to a changing climate. And yes, that can come with the cost of additional steel, but the benefits that can come can also be to share or lease the understory, whether it's for pastoralists for foraging, or whether it's for food production, whether or not it's utilizing energy production for post-harvest sustaining of that food crops, or to introduce a new revenue stream like charging batteries for home use. And can the potential of agrivoltaics reduce the opposition that locals have to energy introduction and off-grid energy systems because you're providing multiple benefits? And globally, we are finding that the public is ready for a solution. Whenever we talk about this work, it gets picked up in the media, and people are recognizing this incredible potential for agrivoltaics to produce power and food. But we need to do the work to find out how well we can utilize agrivoltaics to be a model for a new type of desert farming in a warming world. So what do we need to develop that solution? We need to work on a set of common metrics across space and time. And so when the potential is there to associate research with your installations, we need to work together as an association, as Makoto mentioned, is one of the goals, so that we can all be measuring the same thing, so that we can all assess the potential benefits in the same way. And we need to think about the benefits and the challenges that come from food production and energy production simultaneously, so that when we're designing an agrivoltaic system, it meets the needs of both needs of the people. And we need to start to do a more consistent job about calculating or enumerating the costs and the benefits that are associated with this agrivoltaic system. Because those benefits are sometimes things we can see in terms of energy production, but sometimes there are things that we cannot see, like the potential to cool our local environment and to capture carbon and store it in the soil to fight global warming. And it's only by working together across our international landscape so we can truly assess the potential for agrivoltaics across our different global environments. And so with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you again for all of you in Africa who have considered this opportunity and have allowed me 27 minutes to talk with you about what we do. Thank you to Makoto and all of the other leadership for connecting us and for initiating some potential future collaborations. And so I will stop sharing my screen so that I can see all of your faces.
Oh, thank you, Greg. I think you would have needed more time to thoroughly explain what you have been doing for the past 10 years. But I think the topic itself is quite right for the environment in Mali, where you have a very dry weather, dry and hot and dry weather. So today, I want to have a discussion. Ibrahim, are you there? Okay. Ibrahim,
I'm here.
Yeah, Ibrahim Togola is now in Nigeria in the hotel, but he's having trouble with internet connection. Actually, he has very poor internet connection. So I'm going to invite one more person from Mali Folke Center to join us at the discussion part. Mahamadou. Mahamadou, are you there? Your mic is off.
Yes. Okay, I'm here.
Okay. So let's go to the next session. Well.
Ouais, bon, si je dois parler. Non, si je dois parler, je suis obligé.
Yeah, Makoto, I don't know if you hear me. I just want to say really thanks so much, Greg. I want to thank Greg very much for your really these inspiring contributions, and also remercier tous les participants maliens. Agrivoltaic is a very important topic, especially for our part of the world. And I think is also a great opportunity for technological jumping, allowing the African communities to really make the best use of such technologies, you know, in where the water is getting more scarce and scarce, and then the technology more and more available. So my connection is not so great all the time, so I stop here. So my colleague Mahamadou will really take the discussion, and I appreciate very much also ISEPT, and also Makoto and all the Chris, all ISEPT team, and also my colleague in Mali Fall Center who are really working on this area of agrivoltaics. So thank you very much. I don't know if you hear me clearly, but got to say my connection here from Nigeria is very poor. So, and sorry for that.
Oh, Ibrahim, you sound fine. Excellent. I think now connection is good. So why don't we start a discussion? Why do you have very good connection? Okay. So free discussion about
do that.
Another 20 minutes. And then if you have any question, audience has any question, then you can type it in the question at the box at the bottom of Zoom screen. Because of time constraint, we may not be able to answer all the questions at previous webinars. In that case, we're gonna respond, make sure to respond to you by emails or some other means. Okay. Anyway, so I want to discuss today. I want to discuss these 3 points. I think Greg has already mentioned why agrivoltaics very effective approach in the dry environment, dry and hot environment, and so maybe it's already done, but the folks in Mali really want to know what the suitable crops that you may want to grow under the PV panels. So you had a chiltepin pepper, jalapeno, tomatoes, other examples, and then I wonder why chiltepin pepper grows well, but not jalapeno. It's all they are chilies, and I think they are seems to be drought tolerant. But if you have some insights, what kind of crops you may recommend to the Mali? A good news is tomatoes are growing very good, because tomatoes are one of the main producers in Mali, I guess. And then also, if we have enough time, we want to formulate, think about what sort of pilot project can be done in Mali. Okay.
Great. Yes, I can respond to both of these questions. Is it possible, Makoto, to share the screen again? And I can just pull up
okay,
my graphic.
Let's see.
Maybe let's see. Can you see this slide now?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to show the words and the picture of one of the types of crops, because I'm not sure if we call these plants the same things in different parts of the world. So the one question about what crops are best is the $1 million question. We are always asked this question, and so that is part of, we need to do more trials before we can base our whole new food system on a new approach. But with caution, I can say with caution that we have done work on these crops in our very dryland environment. And you can see I put a positive, a plus sign, means that the crops did very well. 0 is neutral, and a negative for did poorly. And you can see that we have quite a few positives. The this one with basil. Do you know, is basil a common crop in your part of the world? I'm not sure.
Is it in Mali? Do you have basil in Mali? Okay, I'm not sure.
Okay.
We have in mind, yes.
You do? Okay.
You grow basil? Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
So basil is especially interesting because it is one of the herbs so far. Only we have not tried this with more than 3 different herbs, but it is one herb that instead of producing a basil leaf that is only maybe 2 centimeters long in leaf, maybe the leaf is about this size. Yes. But under an agrivoltaics environment, the leaf is trying harder to capture the sunlight,
Right.
and so it actually spreads out, and so we get basil leaves the size of the palm of our hand, so a larger leaf area.
Okay.
Carrots, because we were able to change the seasonality, and again, the leafy greens because we have larger leaves because of the shadier environment. The chiltepine is another one that's especially interesting because it is a native pepper to our region, and plants to survive in our dryland environment have sometimes adapted this ability of growing in the shade of another plant. It's one adaptation. And so if there are local herbs or local vegetables that grow better in the shade of some of the trees, you may find those being some of the plants that do the best in the agrivoltaics environment, simply because you have traded the canopy from a tree to a solar panel. And that chiltepine is found very wildly throughout. So this is an illustration of what crops. The greens like chard and kale and spinach, things that are very nutrient rich, are doing very well. And what I can add to this graphic now is we have been growing Middle Eastern crops like fava beans, chickpea, and cilantro very well under an agrivoltaic setting throughout the last 4 months. And all of them are doing very well. It's very interesting because we know in the changes of the season, when the rains start to come or when the rains go away, we start to have crops that will send, like an herb, will start to create a flower, and it's the end of the growing season. But in an agrivoltaic setting, we delay the timing of that flowering, and so you get more time for the cilantro to produce the leaves, the new leaves after each harvest. You cut the leaves, new leaves, before the plant goes to flowering. We call that bolting, and so we get an extension of the growing season. And the last point, I want to use the same graphic about water, Makoto, for talking about irrigation. Because of this illustration, I showed where you can really reduce how quickly the water leaves the soil. We actually have created a new set of experiments at our installation where we deliver only 50% of the irrigation to see how much more we can reduce our water usage and still produce equal amounts of food. And you reduce the amount of irrigation 50% in the open sun, and you can see your plants by the middle of the day. They look sleepy, kind of like me and Makoto without the coffee. But in an agrivoltaic setting, the plants are still doing fine. Cheers.
Okay, that's great. So the your recommendation, you find the local agriculture produce, which tend to grow better under the shade. Right?
Yes.
That's first pick, right?
Yes. So one question that it's come from the comments is, can we explain the plus and the minus in broccoli? Because this is also a very nutrient-rich crop. In our environment, broccoli starts to form the head, the part that we eat besides the leaves, whenever it experiences cold temperatures. And so the broccoli here, the entire family of Brassicaceae, requires cold temperatures to say to the plant, now you make the head. But the solar panels act like cloudy nights. You know, on cloudy nights, our temperatures do not drop as low. The solar panels actually trap all of the daytime radiation, and so it keeps a localized warmer environment. And I'm sure you have seen this in some of your own installations.
Mhm.
And that meant that our broccoli did not get the signal, now it is cold, now make your head. So the plus is that we made a broccoli plant that was maybe 1.5 meters tall, lots of nutrient-rich leaves. But the negative is if you want to export broccoli heads, no broccoli heads.
That makes sense. Okay, so Muhammad, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. So if you can find any crops grown, which is already grown better under the shade, and also it's commercially profitable crops, then that's gonna be first pick. And can you think of anything like that?
So can you repeat, please? I don't get. Can you repeat, please?
Okay, the plants or agriculture crops which can grow under the shade better, and you can make money out of it. Do you have any good combination, the crops which has a good combination of both in your country?
In Mali, in our experience about the combination of the plants who is growing together. Generally, in my comparison, is sometimes onions and lettuce also, and sometimes carrots. Lettuce.
Legume.
Lettuce, like in salads.
Oh.
Salad.
Okay.
With onions and carrots also, and watermelon.
So we can say that in our dryland environments, we do see good production in carrots, as I mentioned in the example, where we can actually initiate or start the growing season a little bit earlier because it is cooler in their plan under the solar panels. Onions, I forgot to mention, we are also growing right now. Again, it's another positive is it slows down the time until the bolting, until the plant sends up its flower to say it is finished for the season. And watermelon, we've seen less positive experiences, but we will start melons again this year so that we've just planted melon here so we can tell you more at the end of our growing season, so we can share more results going forward.
So even if the crop doesn't grow better under the shade, but there is another benefit of having a PV panel over the top of it, because you can extend what you said, you can extend or delay the growing period, and or you can maybe delay the flowering, and so the market or ordinary market which you have agriculture produce is limited, but if you can sell it out of the season, that's gonna be you can sell it at a higher price maybe. Oh, Ibrahim is there. Yeah.
I think, Makoto, if you can hear me, what I would like to add is what Mamadou said. I think that all the plant what Greg mentioned is quite surprising, because we have all those crops needed in Mali, when it comes to, basil and so on. I think it's quite similar, about the vegetable that used in the Malian market, I think. And the challenge is that most of those vegetables, we have to grow them in a dry season. For example, now we have a quite limited green vegetable in the market because it's too hot. It's 40, 42, 43 degrees in Mali now. So it means the vegetables are quite expensive. So if there are this possibility, of course, the agrivoltaic, I think it makes a lot of sense, because the hottest period in Mali is from March to June, where you have challenges with the vegetables because they need a lot of water. So I think that's something quite interesting. What I want to say.
So what do you think, Greg? For green vegetables, definitely you want more shade and shading, and also conserving the water, right?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes, it's very common for us to experience 41, 42 degrees Celsius in our summers, which is maybe a shorter part of the year, maybe from June, July, August. Sometime September, we will see 41 degrees. And you're right, it is a very difficult time for food production. But that's part of what, like fava beans, we found very good experience of growing these in the summer, to where we harvest them in September, which here maybe maximum daytime temperatures are down to only 38 Celsius. So that means those plants have grown right through the hottest part of the year. Chickpeas have a little bit more of a challenge, but the fava beans seem to do very well. And I think it is the possibilities for me I see are that at least we know that there is something that can grow well in this environment. We have taken some lessons here, but we need to learn in Mali and in the other countries that are thinking about agrivoltaics. How do we match up the foods for your existing diet and do some trials, but also to think about, as Makoto mentioned, what can grow that you could not previously grow? What can you bring to market when it was usually too late for market? And what does it mean when you are the only person selling fava beans because everybody else is too hot to produce fava beans? Or what does it mean for your people when you have the resources of fava beans when other communities do not have fava beans? Such a legume of protein.
So Ibrahim, you are interested in building a cold chains or cold room from the generated electricity. But even without that, I think Agrovoltaics can provide you the opportunity to extend the marketing seasons or marketing period of certain crops, right? So if oh, he's gone. He's gone.
Oh, he's back.
So, and also it will open up opportunity to introduce new crops in the area where you are not able to grow those kind of crops before without the agrivoltaics. And Greg, do you still think do you think we still need to replicate trials in Mali, even if it is proven in Arizona?
Personally, I would say trials would be excellent before you start to modify your local food system. Mm-hmm. But the level of trials is much smaller than it was before. We have proven production in the shade in a dryland environment, and so it's very positive indicators. But we probably have different types of soils, and so it'd be important to do the research there. But I feel like unlike some different environments where we are very uncertain how well agrivoltaics would work, parts of West Africa, North Africa, East Africa seem very positive indicators that would require a little bit more research, but I think a very very positive indication that this likelihood of success is real.
Right. So, well, let's see. Okay, this is a setup you have under harvesting in the Sunrise project, right? And also, this is the one. This is water harvesting gutter is installed.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a similar setting is tried by other pilot project or other research project too. And but in Mali, you have a groundwater source and also surface water from the river, right? So you can have irrigation, pumping.
We have pumping. Sometimes we have the same also. Generally is a pumping system for garden.
So as long as you have a electricity source, you have a water source for all year long.
For land.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
That's good news, right?
That's excellent. In some parts where you have a farther distance to be able to produce water through pumping, this is part of the project that is very new, is in harvesting the sun twice, is the collection of this water. And again, to help extend the dry seasons and the wet seasons, by keeping that water on board, you're able to, we know from the temperatures that we can continue to produce food longer at the end of the growing season, but you must have water in some environments, and the water harvesting enables this if you have a hard time getting water from pumping.
Okay. I think time is almost up, so I want to show you this is one slide. This is from Far Institute for Sustainable Energy Project in actually in West Africa, Gambia and Mali. I'm not sure if Ibrahim is aware of this project, but they are they are going to start this project.
Yeah, I'm aware about. Yes, I'm aware about this project. Yeah, I'm aware about the University of United Nations University. They contact us, and then we have been also exchanging with them in relation of the project we want to do in Oreal. So how can we, because we are working with, that Makoto, we are working on that proposal to also do the pilot project. So I'm aware about this project for Mali, yes.
Okay. So basically, this is a similar idea that everybody has in African countries, I guess. And then the Richard and Greg's project is looking at a similar aspect of the Agrovoltaics, right? So it's much for livelihood programs, the water, energy, food. So if we want to do a similar project, and then we have enough stakeholders right now.
Yeah, I agree, Makoto. It's very exciting to see more people recognizing the potential. And if you think about the differences between this slide and the previous one, I think the primary one is the design of the photovoltaic system overhead. The design for harvesting the sun twice, yes, you can see allows for more light penetration through. And it's because it is for a part of the country that could use a little bit less shading, right? In some of these more equatorial regions, you might have the need for more sunlight penetration for your vegetables. And in the figure you just showed, you're protecting the plants quite a bit, a more dense solar canopy. And for me, this is the type of pilot research that would still be necessary. When you ask, do we still need to do research before deployment? It would be around questions of what is that ratio of sunlight captured by the solar panels and sunlight transmission to the food. But I have every indication there's a positive relationship. It's more about optimizing the two types of solar capture. But exciting times.
Okay. I think we have one more question from the audience. That Does shade affect nutrient absorption?
Yes, this is a very good food science question. So we actually have a new graduate student who is studying the nutrition and the taste differences that people might experience with agrivoltaics and traditional food production. I can say that in our setting, we have seen less pest affecting the plants in the agrivoltaic setting, because oftentimes a plant is susceptible to pests because it is stressed. You know, the insects can detect that the plant is stressed. And if you can reduce the stress of your plants, then not only is the plant doing better, but it's not producing compounds that detract insects. And I feel like you can taste some of those compounds. The nutrition question is still very open, but we are harvesting some of the crops that I mentioned, the onions, the fava beans, the chickpeas, the tomatoes, for this kind of nutrient analysis. But the plants still look very nice and green. They taste very good. Every time we have a harvest for our science, everyone sends emails and says, okay, come to the refrigeration. We have, kilogram of cilantro for today. So it's exciting to be able to eat your science.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. So time is almost up. So let's sum up. And before we have a word from both Greg and Ibrahim, I want to tell you how chore matters. We have upcoming webinars scheduled next month. This one is fixed. May 13th, 11 o'clock Central European time. The speaker is Max Stromsdorf from Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy Systems. And he's going to talk about the technology transfer and lessons learned from Japan and Germany. So please book the date and time, and be there with us. And then in June, we have Agrivoltaics 2021 conference. So if you are not registered, if you are interested, please do so. So, and July and the way forward, we have another webinar series coming up. So you can look at all the information on our website, both in English and French. So, and including the videos and presentation materials. So do visit our website too. So can you have a last word, Greg and Ibrahim?
Yes, my final comments would be, it's been a very exciting over the last decade, and especially the last few years, to see an interest in this new way of producing food and energy. I think the potential is exceptional, especially in our dryland environments. And I'm very glad to have Makoto and Chris and everyone connect me with some of you from the dryland parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Ibrahim?
Yeah, thank you so much, Makoto. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, the CEP team. Thank you, Mali Forsan team. And thank also to the audience. So that have been really, I'm sorry for the technical issues. That is, something that I'm sorry about that. I didn't know that the internet connectivity will be like this here in Nigeria. So it might be just my fault. Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank to all of you. Yeah. So looking forward for the international, for the March, May event, so to participate and contribute on this. All the best and great week.
Okay, you barely made it. So thank you, Ibrahim. And I hope see you at the next webinar in May. All of you, please join us. And also at the Agrivoltaics 2021 conference. Thank you very much for participating, and thank you very much for joining, giving talk, Greg, at the very, very early morning, 5 a.m. in Arizona. So thank you for, and please join us for the next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.